Hi again, everybody. Scott Costa, publisher of TED Magazine. Thanks for joining me for another audio and video distributed with TED Magazine podcast. We have Desiree Grace and Andrea Olson back on again because they're great guests and they provide so much insight. And this is a tough one. We really talked about an interesting topic that we finally narrowed it down to say surgical spending. How are we smartly spending money following a pandemic, year where things were pretty difficult and everybody was like, we need to cut expenses. Do we cut just a certain amount? How are we smart? How are we getting back into the game? I mean, they just had some great comments and some great ideas when it comes to spending in 2021. So you're going to want to listen to this. I want to introduce them to you real quick. First, Andrea Olson. She's a behavioral scientist and customer centricity expert. She's the CEO of Pragmatic, which helps companies better understand their customers through behavioral economics. She also speaks from the stage, teaching others about the art and science of customer understanding. Desiree Grace is currently the Vice President, Strategic Distribution in the Americas for Panduit. She develops, leads, and drives channel partner strategy, channel partner marketing and programs, develops and deploys the channel sales team, and manages the financial indicators within North America. A great conversation with both of them about surgical spending. Check it out on the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. A great topic to talk about. Surgical spending is what we're going to talk about in 2021. And it's great to have Desiree Grace and Andrea Olson back with us again. It's it's a tough topic because I know a lot of companies, a lot of thought processes. Hey, we're going to cut spending this year by 20%. And they really haven't thought through what that 20% is, or that 10% or that 8%, or whatever it is. They're just surgically saying cut expenses. Andrea, I'll just start with you.
Amputee.
Yes, exactly. Andrea, I'll start with you, though. I mean, come on. Is that even realistic? Is that really a strategy? What is that?
Hatchet. I'm not trying to be flip, but
yeah,
anyone off the street and someone shows you the numbers and the CFO says, you know what, we need to cut 10 to 20%. And that person says, okay, let's cut 8, let's cut 15. And that's the number. Because these are aggregates, right? It's because that's the level that finance operates. It doesn't mean they're wrong. They can't really tell you where. They can tell you where the big numbers are. They can say, this is the biggest number. This is the second biggest number. And those are easy buttons. Okay, biggest number, let's make the biggest number smaller. When really in a complex organization, it is about surgical precision. Right? Because a hatchet job, you could accidentally take out a little more meat than you really want, and then you're going to have to put it back in again. So, I think it's something that should be actually practiced on a daily basis.
And Desiree, it's a little hard to predict the future, obviously. I mean, we don't know what's, we don't know what's going to happen next and what the cost of raw materials is going to be realistically 6 months from now, and global trade and whatever else. So how do you kind of, sort of measure yourself right now to make sure that you're spending what you want to be spending on, and you're not, oh gosh, we spent foolishly in March and now we're going to pay for it in the third quarter or the fourth quarter of this year?
Well, I think you have to have a thought process behind it. And, we talked in an earlier podcast about strategy, and, the conventional wisdom says you have strategic pillars and you benchmark your decisions against your strategic pillars. If we want to get unfancy and just get back to basics.
We're pretty informal here on the podcast. Go ahead. Yeah, we're not fancy.
What are the things that are important to you? Who are the customers that are important to you? Who are the employees that are important to you? What's the machine or the factory or the geography or the vertical that's important to you? You need to know what your priorities are. And that's where you need to spend the money first.
Yeah.
But irrespective, even if you get down to maybe your third target market, if I can use that term, think of that bullseye, and you're on the third ring. Even if you're out there, you've spent most of your money on the bullseye, but you got a little bit left for the secondary and the tertiary target markets, you're still not going to throw money at it. You have to think about what's the ROI, what am I trying to accomplish, Does this activity, this initiative, is it really impactful? Does it have value? One of the sort of historic mandates in our industry has been the golf outing. The annual holy grail that is the golf outing. Everybody wears their logo polo shirts, and they buy their best customers way too much beer.
Yep.
Everybody gets sunburned. There's an awards banquet afterwards, and there's some, more logo door prizes. And basically spent 10 hours, and what did you really accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see an evaluation of, do I really need to spend that amount of time, that amount of money, that amount of energy at a golf outing? That's the hatchet job versus, let's be really surgical. I've got this distributor that aligns really well with me, and we're both going after this same vertical market. We've identified 10 target customers. They've committed to inventory. We both have a game plan on how we're going to enter this market and be impactful and differentiate ourselves as a team from our competition. That's where I want to spend some money.
Yeah.
We've got a strategy, we've got goals, we've got metrics, we've got a game plan. Oh yeah. A golf outing. Probably somebody's going to be throwing darts at the screen as I say that, but
I want my golf outing. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Andrew, do you agree?
I do. I mean, I think, there's the soft, warm, and fuzzy things that on one hand, we can't get rid of them all, even though there's really no clear ROI to them. Yet we have a hard time deciding which ones to get rid of because they're popular, right? It's fun. The golf outing is time off work, right? I mean, it's what it paid time off work.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about surgical spending and we talk about understanding your business at a more micro level, to me, it's the 80-20 rule. Okay. And we say, all right, 80% of our revenue comes from 20% of our customers. And so we use that same mentality when we're looking at cutting costs. We say, all right, so we're going to cut off these big chunks because they're the big bulk of the cost. So we're going to cut travel expenses by 50%. Now that everybody's used to this Zoom thing, great, it'll be no problem. And these things that are natural and easy. But if you think about something that's a lot more disciplined, something that's like, let's say you saved $5 a day and you compounded that every day. What do you have at the end of the year? You have a lot of money. Okay? I'm not even going to do the math. The point is that when you look at your operation, because it's probably grown in spurts, right? You were at this size and then maybe you had an acquisition and then you grew another spurt. Then you got a big major account and that grew a whole nother spurt. And you have processes and people and layers in your organization like a cake that cost you money. But because it's not on the P&L, because it's invisible to you as an executive, you go, I don't know where to cut that. So I'll kick that down to a manager and say, how can you optimize your process? How do you cut some costs? And nobody's thinking about how these big picture things intersect. And this is what I say, because I was working with an organization that made these technical documents for their products. And they were multi-page, hundreds and hundreds of product tech sheets, right? Everybody knows what these are.
Yeah.
And they had a team of like 5 or 6 people full-time making these in like Adobe InDesign, and they had to look a certain way and meet the brand and yada, yada. And then at some point, a product number would change, a product spec would change, a product name would change. You have to go through this process. And it's like, this is inefficient. We have 5 full-time people doing this. This is not value add. This is just stuff. We need this. Yeah. And so the question was, okay, how can we put all this into a database in product images, specifications, so I can change it one place, they're all interconnected, and then I can, boom, like in an instant, it's all changed and instantly up to date. So the guy in the field, he goes online and he downloads the newest one. right then and there. He doesn't have a stack in his car. And so, but that's looking at this mid-sized picture of across the operation of how you can simplify and cut costs. So now you got 5 people that you can reallocate for more valuable things that can drive direct revenue. So I think at the top, we don't see it. We see that, big piece. And at the bottom, we're too close to our own sphere. And so if we want to do surgical spending, it has to be that middle and how we can do things faster, simpler, more efficiently.
I have some follow-ups, but Desiree, I see you reacting. So I'm going to let you react first to what Andrea just said, and we'll go from there.
I think it is really interesting to take a step back and look at what you're doing and why. I just had a really interesting, productive conversation with one of our distributors a few hours ago. And I said, look, we're doing this spend on this activity. And I inherited this, but I have to ask why. Because you're spending a lot of time and energy pulling all the data together to do this activity. We're spending a lot of time and energy reviewing the data. And at the end of the day, how much is it really? 1.6, 1.7%? Could we, as reasonable people and partners, figure out a better way to do this activity? Or better yet, why are we doing it? Because I have my feelings about why we're doing this. Why do you think we're doing it? Okay, so now we understand the why behind the activity. Now we really know and agree, both of us, that we can figure out a better way as reasonable people and as partners to get rid of this activity we've been doing and spending on this thing. And we can accomplish the exact same thing, the why, in a much simpler, more elegant, efficient, cost-effective way. And what was interesting about that is with this particular customer, I was just really transparent. And I said, this doesn't make sense to me. And I'm asking you to take a fresh look at it and walk through it with me. I mean, so to this distributor's credit, they were, receptive. And it ended up being a really short, productive, positive conversation. So part of the takeaway that I'll share with the audience is being transparent and open. Now, granted, this is a good customer, a partner customer, but being open and transparent about, what you're questioning and why, that's probably a better approach than the hatchet job Andrea was talking about earlier. Because now you're solving the problem or addressing the opportunity together.
So a bunch of follow-ups here. Hang in there with me on this one. So, and again, I apologize, but I'm going back to the golf. It's just the way we're at. First of all, did it take a good pandemic to make us realize that maybe golf isn't a great, and not just golf, but every expense.
The ball game, the skeet shoot.
Whatever. Well, we spent the last year reevaluating our expenses, and I am sure that a number of CFOs looked at the golf thing and said, well, that's, like instantly, okay, that's out. Okay, that, but if there wasn't a pandemic, that would absolutely 100% be it. Tell me I'm wrong. So how do we sort of reevaluate ourselves now going forward to say, okay, we're not going to do this golf event anymore, running the risk of, but competitor A down the road might pick it up and still do one.
So maybe your response is, I'm not going to stop doing golf outings, but I'm going to be much more selective about the golf outings I'm doing. Yeah. Maybe that's the right approach. It's not a one size fits all answer, Scott.
No.
Everybody's got a different business model, a different set of customers, et cetera. But even just taking a step back and looking at it and saying, woohoo, COVID's over. I get to go back to the way things used to be. Bloody Marys on the golf course at 9 a.m. Yay. That's not realistic.
Right, right.
So the idea I would propose is take a step back and look at what you're spending. Don't go back to the way you did it before. Maybe you don't kill all the golf outings and all the skeet shoots and all the ball games. Maybe you just get more surgical about the ones you do.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so, Andrea, then moving forward comes, sort of the reopening of events, in-person events that are going to happen. And again, in our, supply chain, whether it's, lighting trade shows or NAED conferences or things like that, we did not have a travel budget last year. We eliminated all that fairly quickly. We did not have travel expenses. And in a world of we're cutting, again, an arbitrary number, 8 to 20% of our expenses, there's the offshoot that we're going to be limiting the number of people who are traveling. So how do we surgically spend? Again, I'm a big believer in spend a little, make a lot. You're going to have a hard time pushing me off of that soapbox. But how do we kind of evaluate our spending going forward, again, on things like travel?
To me, there's two parts of it. And one is, and I'm a big proponent of customers. Is okay. So if you have a customer, we're talking B2B, okay?
Yeah.
Golf outing doesn't add value to them. What are their challenges?
Mm-hmm.
They want to grow business. They want diversity of offerings. They have needs. Design what you're doing to help them succeed.
Mm-hmm.
The golf outing is just a fun thing. I mean, yeah, okay, some deals happen. That's the lore is that the deals happen on the golf course. Yes. And not to stereotype, but for salespeople on the ground, yes, that is true. And I totally agree. But if you're talking, about surgical spending and strategic thinking about this, it's okay. And as Desiree said, I'm going to want a golf outing with, if I could have one partner, vendor, customer this year, who would that be? And that's where I'm going to spend the money. And maybe it's a trip to Vegas. I don't care. But you're not just doing it across the board. It's very strategically thought through. And this is what I always ask clients and of course all the staff here is when there's an idea and we're trying to figure out whether it fits our organizational premise and purpose. And someone's passionate about it, but it's filigree, right? It's really just for fun. It's like, okay, great. Would you write the check? Would you write the check? If this golf outing is so important, okay, great. You can write the check. I mean, as a company, this doesn't totally align, but you totally have the blessing, salesperson, go ahead and do that. And then that starts changing the mentality because especially if you're spending other people's money, everybody has great ideas on how it's spent.
Yeah, right. But let me follow up on that then real quick because I loved what you said there about, help them succeed. So I'm a philosophical non-existent distributor. And again, there's an NAED event that's coming up. And so what you're saying is my first conversation should be, how am I going to help my partners succeed at this upcoming NAED event or IMARC or AD event or whatever it might happen to be? And so using that tactic, then you decide, just for clarity's sake, then you decide how many people you should be sending to make sure that you're having strategic, productive meetings with your partners.
Right. It's a question of what do they need, right? Do they need specialists in certain subject matters? Do they need support and funding for a booth? Honestly, and Desiree had alluded to this in an earlier podcast about somebody getting, sending faxes, right? And you go, yeah, you know what they might need help with? Actually, a technology upgrade.
Yeah.
You know what? We could buy an Adobe license for them and get their whole team trained so they can communicate better with their customers and with us and help them modernize. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do that invests in something that you'll get a return on versus throwing bodies at it or throwing golf balls at
it. Don't throw golf balls at people. But but it's a great point, Desiree. And let's ask, kind of your side of it. I would assume that you would want to make sure that you're having again, productive in-person meetings at these events and making sure that the right people and the right amount of people are there. You'd agree with that?
I do. I think you need to start with what's the objective.
Yeah.
And then you don't start with the golf outing, the trip to Vegas, whatever. You start with what's the objective and what's the best way to get to the objective.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be a case where there is a golf outing. Maybe you got a customer who's a passionate golfer. Mm-hmm. In that case, maybe it is. You've gotten to know this customer. And if there's one thing that's going to be the tipping point, it's going to be, golf. Fine, go for it, especially if you're in customer acquisition mode with the big whale.
Yeah.
But to Andrea's point, what's the need? What's the objective? What do they really need help with? And could we reallocate that money in a more intelligent, impactful way? Mm-hmm. This is the season of marketing development funds. A lot of people refer to it as co-op.
Yeah.
I will stand up and say I view it as earned. I don't view it as an entitlement. Mm-hmm. That could potentially make me a very unpopular person. But if you look at those marketing development funds as earned, last year was a tough year all the way around.
Right.
So you got your black and white mathematical formula on how you earn marketing development funds. Hopefully that formula was invented with some market intelligence and some goals in mind.
Yeah.
But do you want to enforce it? Do you want to flex it? Do you want to take the math and then bring some art to it? Mm-hmm. And say, okay, I've got the science and math. Now I need to bring the art and the psychology to it and, take another look at it and say, do I need to do some things differently or better, or do I need to tweak or modify my approach? Those are some questions I think we're probably all asking ourselves or should be asking ourselves. Because in this very specific industry-wide example, marketing development funds, if there's math and science and they're set up as an earned figure, mm-hmm. and if that's your mental philosophical approach to marketing development funds, you didn't earn a lot last year. Probably very few people.
Right.
There's outliers, but very
mm-hmm.
few people earned a lot last year. Okay. And the companies that are paying out those marketing development funds, they didn't earn a lot last year either.
Right. Right.
So you got to make that point, because sometimes distributors go back to the manufacturers.
Yeah.
What are we going to do if we flip the script and look at it as an investment in 21, 22, 23? Mm-hmm. So if you flip the script and you look at marketing development funds as an investment, you don't just go out and day trade and throw a bunch of money in, a bunch of different mutual funds. You pick your stocks very carefully. You look at the ones that are in high growth industries, that have high share in those high growth industries, or that they've got some fantastic technology or widget that's going to help them leapfrog their competition. You're investing your money carefully. We need to be doing the same thing.
And so I'll follow up on that then, Desiree. There's sort of I'm going to push hard away from the golf thing now. And so we're going to move toward just sort of the right word for it, intimacy. I can't think of the right word but I'll say this. When we got on today to record a podcast, the first thing you asked was, hey, how you feeling? And that means something to me. You could have said, how you doing? Hey, what's happening? But you didn't. You asked how I was feeling. I mean, it was really like something to it. So flash that forward to, how are you spending money? Again, it was a horrible year of people dying and getting sick, and it was nuts. flash forward to now, how am I strategically, surgically spending money so that my partners, not my vendors or my whatever, feel the way I want them to feel about me? How does that work out going forward? And again, it's easy to, talk about, well, I'm going to give you marketing dollars and then you're going to feel good about me, aren't you? I mean, that's not the answer. But, how do we make our surgical spending sort of, repair the break that happened over the past 12 months?
That is a very large, very tough question.
I know. That's why we're here on the podcast.
I think you do step back and you look at, what am I spending the money on and why am I spending it? And it's not just marketing development funds and customer junkets,
right.
Customer training, customer development.
Mm-hmm.
You choose to invest money in expanding manufacturing capacity. There is a lot of people that are looking at reshoring or doing things differently with their supply chain, let's say. You might be really concerned with employee retention. So you might say, this is really important to my organization. So I am going to spend money this year on employee development and employee retention.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different things that happened last year. There were companies that did furloughs. There were companies that stopped contributions to 401ks. There were companies that gave people salary cuts. Presumably, those were all strategic decisions that were not a knee-jerk reaction to slash and burn hatchet jobs so the bottom line looks good for the shareholders. I'm going to assume good intent and that there was a strategy and a communication behind that. Mm-hmm. So I think what's equally compelling, we're starting to see a recovery.
Yeah,
we're actually recovering more quickly in Q1 than a lot of us anticipated, to be honest. So can you roll back some of those things sooner?
Yeah.
If you haven't already.
Yeah.
The actions that companies take are going to be really compelling in communicating, whether they're transparent and forthright, or whether their actions are speaking louder than their words. They're really going to be communicating what their priorities are. So, if an organization brings back employees that were furloughed, that's telling us something about an organization. If an organization is investing in new technology, maybe they're upgrading their ERP system, that's telling us about what their priorities are.
Right.
The places organizations are choosing to spend money should align with their priorities, their most important goals and objectives.
Right. And Andrea, let me dovetail on that a little bit, because again, we want people apparently to dislike us. So now it's the CFOs that are going to be like, Scott, you're a knucklehead. But should we be reevaluating our surgical spending like monthly? Because I don't know, to your point, Andrea, or Desiree, to your point, I don't know what the data is going to say about how we're doing in August. I seriously have no clue. Is the recovery going to be a monstrous spike in that direction? Is it going to kind of flat? I don't know. Nobody really knows. I mean, we're coming out of a pandemic that nobody even knew was a potential. So how should we be evaluating our spending? I mean, we talk about, again, at the beginning, we talk about we're going to cut across the board a number. Are we thinking, you know what, every month we should be evaluating what our expenses are?
Ideally.
Yeah.
It's unreasonable, though.
I know.
If you've ever been in an executive board meeting, which I've been in, and granted, not everyone's the same, but, the common sentiment is, this is the number we need to be at. There's no, and so how much time do we have before we need to be there? 30 days. Okay, well, I'm not doing a lot of surgery in 30 days, right? That takes time. So show me the big numbers. All right. I've got, employee costs, travel costs, all right. What can we cut? What can we reduce? And you can get down to certain things, like especially in manufacturing, and say, okay, our electric bill is huge. Can we negotiate with the electric company to do off-peak hour, or, something like that?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that you can task a manager, ops manager with, and yay. But surgical spending, to me, it's like continuous improvement. It's the part of the organization that needs to be embedded within the culture, right? Why we do things the way we do, and what are our principles? And one is we're going to look at what we're doing and ask, why are we doing it that way? What is it really costing us? And then saying, what are we losing because of it? Like the fax example. And what can we do to make this more efficient and simple? Because think about the things that over the years you collect in your home. You forget about them. They're in the closet or whatever. And then when you have to move or you're looking to do spring cleaning and you're like, why do I have this? It's been here 1,000 years. And that's just your home.
Yeah.
So it's about thousands of people in organizations that are doing basically that same thing.
Good point.
Process that they use, and I've used this all the time, and I don't want to learn something new. I can do this really fast. But it has a trickle-down effect to, let's say, partners or other departments, or even the customer, where it's like, I have to call you to get a copy of my invoice. Or we have a client that said, our system is antiquated, but we don't want to spend the money. But customers can call us and we can email them a copy of their bill. They can't pay it online. They have to send in a check. Is that a big deal? Like, that was the question. Is that a big deal? It's like, it is a big deal.
Yes.
How many people do you have that collect the mail, take the mail, sort the mail, take the check, process the check, account for it? Like, that's a cost to you, even though you think the technology is like, not a big deal. So it is a mentality shift. It's a mental shift that you have to start putting it in as a habit.
Well, let's keep an eye on this. I'm going to keep an eye on spending, and kind of what my own personal strategies are, over the next few months. You guys kind of do the same, and let's revisit, again, 4 or 5 months from now and kind of see how the surgical spending is going. And Desiree Grace, Andrea Olson, it's always great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for sharing the insight, again, teaching me so much stuff, which that's why I have you back all the time. It's so great. Just, I think from a personal standpoint, I just learn a whole bunch from you guys. So thanks a ton for doing that. I really appreciate coming on the podcast. Seriously, thanks a lot. Real quick, again, a couple of ways to contact me. Give me a phone call, 314-812-5311, or you can send me an email, scosta, SCOSTA at NEAD.org. We'll talk about anything and everything that relates to TED Magazine till we get a chance of talking out. And everybody, thank you a ton for listening and for watching the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast.